Hi loves, welcome back. Okay. Okay, I need to explain myself first. Okay. So this year I wanted to switch things up a little bit right here. So last year I did the 3 favorite albums, 2 favorite B-sides, 1 favorite title tracks video for last year. This year I wanted to switch things up a bit. So this year I want to do a monthly favorites video where I talk about my favorite songs every single month. The first video I will make videos where like I will count down my favorite songs of the month, B-sides, title tracks included, and then a separate video where I talk about my favorite albums in the most rapid fire way I can try. I don't know how that's gonna work because I tried making a favorite albums video one time for my 2020 favorite albums video of the year, and talking about 15 albums takes up like 1 hour and 40 minutes of the time. Oh boy. So I'm gonna try my best to summarize my thoughts of each album as rapid fire as I could. This video idea was inspired by one of my subscribers right here, B1Beat, who made their favorite EPs and LPs of the year, and they gave like descriptors under every album. So I really want to try that, especially the part where they describe the album in like very short sentences, as opposed to me where I kind of just like ramble on and on and on about why I like said album, which took up 1 hour and 40 minutes of my time. But yeah, I'll definitely try my best to talk about why I like each album and what makes them so amazing and what makes them so unique. Yeah, let's jump right into it. Here are my favorite albums of January 2021. Let's get it. So this first album of this list is also the first release of the year, and also the first ever Korean music release that I ever heard this year. So obviously, it has a special place in my heart, obviously. But yeah, it's a very nice album. Definitely really a pleasant indie lo-fi hip-hop listen. The middle parts of the album tend to get a little bit drawn out at times, but the first and last tracks of the album are especially really nice, solid listens. Life Later is still my favorite of this album. I really enjoy Life Later. I think it goes into the Spring Breeze outro music playlist, if that even is a thing. So yeah, if you guys like really nice lo-fi indie hip-hop, then go give some listen, you know?
Turn off the moonlight. Please don't let it shine.
I'm almost there, you guys. I'm almost there to fully liking an idol comeback. The title track is okay-ish. I wasn't too keen on it. It might grow on me as the months go by. It's a very pleasant listen. I really like their take on the traditional Oriental concept, but in a very more dark princess kind of vibe. They really nailed the dark princess concept they've been doing since I Trust era, and they definitely continue it in this era, only that this time this album is definitely more cohesive than the last, and each of the tracks really complement each other very, very well, giving it a more cohesive conceptual of what concept. And I think if Idol continues this route, I think they can establish their own image and sound in the future, and they can definitely stand out from the pack. I Burn is probably my most favorite Idol release to date. This is my favorite album of them and their most cohesive album. Well done, Idol. I hope great things from you guys in the future. I wasn't expecting much going into this album because it's a ballad album, and when it comes to ballad albums, they're mostly a hit or miss for me. When every single track is a ballad, it gets really, I would say, boring for me. I want to switch things up a little bit, and this album, I actually like it. I mean, it made it on the list, so of course I like it, but why? Well, for one, I actually like how, even though that each of the tracks are ballads, I still like how he changes up each of the ballads for each track listing. For example, like some of the ballads are more up-tempo, slightly up-tempo, and some of the ballads are more sadder and more somber. It makes for a more diverse listening experience, even though like most if not all of the tracks on the album are in fact ballads. I definitely would like a lot more like upbeat stuff, maybe like upbeat acoustic stuff here and there, but it's Yang Dario and his voice can really carry a song, and his voice definitely carries the album, and I really felt his emotions running through the album. I definitely really like this. It will make it a little bit higher on my list had it not been like just wall-to-wall ballads, but that's just my personal opinion. But I still really enjoy this one. Definitely one of the better ballad albums I've listened to in my years of K-pop experience listening. Yep.
Why do you make me cry? Why do you bring me down?
Oh, Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher's title tracks for me, they tend to be split down the middle between I really like it versus meh, I'm not really too keen on it, and Odd Eye definitely goes into the second category, sorry guys. But the album, especially the last 3 tracks, minus the instrumental, there we go, the last 3 tracks are especially my favorite. They slap so hard. Poison Love really gives me their like very signature like psytrance-y, experimentally kind of EDM music that they're very known to do, especially like akin to Silent Night in their Rate of Dream album, and in the Frozen from their Dystopia Tree of Language album. I really dig that sound. And also For Memory, at first I was like, it's a nice song, but I find it growing on me bit by bit, and eventually it really became one of my absolute favorites on this album. It really like makes me want to run out into a field of flowers and just frolic around and smell the flowers and feel the wind, feel the breeze, the spring breeze in my face. Wow, this song makes me feel so happy. You have no idea. Even though the album could have used a bit more work, I still think that this is a solid release as per every Dreamcatcher release. And yeah, I really think they had a job well done. Well done, girls. Cole is a name I was, let's just say I thought I was not familiar with until I recently found out he was from Off On Off, which I loved listening to back in the day. I really loved their stuff. So, and I didn't know that Cole went solo or actually did solo stuff. Maybe it's just me not being able to catch up to R&B or hip-hop spheres. Like, the K-hip-hop and K-R&B spheres are like a weird thing for me because sometimes they drop albums out of the sky for me. It just felt like, hey guys, I'm gonna drop my album. Look down below. It just definitely felt like it, and this album release also felt like it fell down from the sky for me. Yeah, it's very interesting, but I like it. Hey, it's on my list, so of course I like it. It's a very nice R&B listen, very smooth experience, very vibey, chill, and all that good stuff. I actually enjoy it, and even though the first track, yeah, I could do without the first track to be honest, but the rest of the album actually slaps. I like it a lot. Look, hear me out. If you slap the word lo-fi onto any album, me, who uses lo-fi tracks at every outro of every video, would eat this shit up. Seriously, this is cheating. This dude is cheating. How could you, dude? Literally, you had to slap the name lo-fi on there and give me like wall to wall, just straight up lo-fi bops. It's gonna get me interested, let's just say. Oh my goodness, this album really rocks. I absolutely love it. I actually had this album playing in the background when I was doing my assignments, and even though I was really stressed doing my assignment, this album really helped calm me down. It really like de-stresses me as I was trying to chase my deadlines. It's a really nice relief from the album. There are some tracks in there that I just kind of felt like it's a bit too drony for me, and I'm almost on the verge of falling asleep while listening to it. But there are some like peppy lo-fi tracks in there that I absolutely really like. And the frequent collaborating album Kunu also really adds a lot to the album. They were on like 4 tracks on the album, and just to say that they really added like that little bit that little bit of spice in there, like a little bit of salt, that spice, that seasoning in this album that I absolutely really like. Yeah, I actually would want to listen to it again actually. Coffee Boy is also one of those names where I have heard somewhere before in my years of K-pop listening. Like, I definitely have heard the name Coffee Boy before, but I've never really enticed to listen to them because I've always felt like they would not be the music for me. But right now, I'm actually really in the indie mood, and I am very much craving for like very raw indie acoustic keys sounding acoustic-y, like very calming sounding songs. This is what I yearn for these days. And this album really also hits the spot for me. It definitely could have better pacing. For me, it definitely could use some better pacing, maybe like reshuffle the tracks a little bit to make it more cohesive. But some of the tracks on there, especially the ones with the female duets, the ones with the duets, actually really captured my attention. I really love it when there's like duets in albums or duet songs. I absolutely really enjoy duets in general, and you know, I'll eat that up, you know. I feel like the entire video so far has just been like, or can be summarized into, oh my god, I've never heard of this person before, but wow, they make good music. Who would have thought? This is another band that I have kind of knowledge about. I have seen their name before somewhere. I have listened to some of their songs. You should go check this one out where they're in the car. I forgot the name of the song right now, but they were in the car and the whole video was like 360 shot and shit, and it was really wacky and like trippy and cool, and the song, the synth sounds actually like really slap. Love Stereo is a synth-based indie band that I think like if you are really into like retro nostalgic sounds, definitely go check them out. This album in particular really hammers the whole, I guess you could say, like very nostalgic 90s nerd stuff. Like if you like anything space, Star Wars, Star Trek, comic books, and everything 90s stuff, then I think you'll dig this album a lot. Again, like the Coffee Boy one, it could definitely use some better pacing. Maybe like reshuffle the tracks here and there, maybe put this song up there, maybe put this song down there and make it more cohesive. But Rebel Dress would forever be my jam. This song gives me confidence. I absolutely love it. And the entire album is also a nice chill listen as well. Definitely a very interesting like synth pop band if you really want to check them out, if you're into like synth pop, because hey, the retro wave is hitting K-pop like a storm. So, you know, if you really are into retro sounds, go and listen, you know what I mean?
And I cry every night, die every night.
Just like Love Stereo and Coffee Boy, Carter Garden is also a name. I'm starting to sense a theme right here where I have heard of before. I have listened to some of the songs before. I'm starting to sound repetitive at this point. But yeah, this song in particular with the animated music video is pretty nice. It's definitely calming. I don't really feel like listening to it again, but it's a very nice listen. I actually had a good impression of it. But this album is a very nice surprise for him because I always thought that he's more of like a very ballady, acoustic ballady person from like what I've heard from him and from the song and the other album that Spotify randomly recommended to me back in 2016, 2017. This album is a more indie folk listen, if you know what I mean. Like it's more, it has ballads, it has like your ballads, it has your acoustic stuff, but all in all it definitely makes for a very like an indie folk aesthetic to it, or like a folk pop aesthetic to it. And definitely feels more raw and a very much more approachable way of doing, you know, pop music, you know what I mean, like folk pop. He's doing a folk pop album, you know. I said you know a lot, I just realized that. But yeah, this is a very calming album. I actually think that his voice really complements the album very well. It was a nice surprise though, because I actually entered the album not expecting anything, but coming out of the album, I actually felt really, really refreshed, and I was like, wow, I would want to listen to it again. So yeah, good job.
수많은 향기 속 우연처럼 내게로 와.
Okay, hear me out. If you guys are into Yukika and you're like, man, I wish there's another city pop-esque K-pop artist for me to listen to because, you know, Yukika's my jam and all, but like, she can't be the only one, right? Well, let me introduce you to Roon. This girl, Chef's Kiss, this album, Chef's Kiss. There are some ballads in there, thrown in there, but the main meat of this album is the city pop bangers such as Picturesque Moment and Scent. These two songs especially are just music to my ears. Well, they're literally music, but they're just heaven to my ears. I absolutely love these songs, especially Scent. They add so much to the album, and I think in the first week of January, I actually listened to this album quite a bit alongside another album that I will talk about in a moment. But I love her voice on the album. Her voice is so very vintagey. It adds like that rustic, like vintage feel to the album. And it also gives like 80s city pop nostalgic vibes. So if you really like some of Yukika's more mellower stuff like Cherry Jubilees, then I recommend you guys to check out this album. It's very, very good. I'm actually really happy I found this artist out because she rocks, and I hope she makes more like city pop jams because I need more of those in my life.
다리미 온도가 아직 남아있는 듯한 셔츠 칼같이 빳빳하게 다려진 칼라.
If you're into like more kookier sounds, I suggest give this album a listen. When I first listened to it, I was like, oh, it's gonna be like one of those like, you know, indie-ish pop albums, I guess. You know what I mean? Like I kind of just shrugged and just give it a listen. But once I got out the album, I was like, oh, that's really nice.
Hey, that's pretty good.
I like the sound design on the album. Like some of the parts of the album, there are some songs where the sounds just go beep boop, beep beep boop. And there are a lot of really interesting moments that catch your ear in the album that really just, you know, perks you up and makes you wonder what happens next. It's very unpredictable in its predictability. Like the songs are definitely your, like, you know, your standard indie pop-ish fare. But what really grabs your attention is the more like the way that the person actually like engineers each song and about the sound design, and also the sound design is deliberately placed throughout the tracks on this album that really, really gives you like the really cool experience and it draws you in. I really, really didn't think I would dig this album, but I actually feel like I want to listen to it again, especially since there's some tracks on the album that are just like, you know, full-on upbeat, and then there's like your mellow songs, and then your upbeat songs, your mellow songs. It is really amazing. Go check it out. I said this for every album on this list, but yeah, go check it out.
On the highway road, girl, I wanna know.
As far as hip-hop releases go this month, there are a handful of duds, I would say, but the standout ones are truly standouts. And this is one of them. 5 is someone that I don't know existed until now. I've never heard of 5 before. I don't know if he just debuted or he has been around for a long time, but when I came into this album, I was expecting not much, and then I was like, oh, wow, bright hip-hop beats, yay! I like bright hip-hop beats. Bright chill hop songs are my jam, and this album definitely caters one of it. The like Hangover featuring Joyce Yu definitely sounds like it could come straight out of a cartoon, and I love it. Very kooky at times, but it gives you chill vibes. Definitely one of the better Korean hip hop albums, and it's also one of the best chill hop albums of the month. And then this album came along. Kid Wine came along, saw 5, stepped up to the throne, yeeted him out of the throne, and sat on it like a boss bitch. This album knows what it's doing. This is, I thought for sure that 5 would have my favorite chill hop album of the month. And then Kid Wine came in. Like 5, I didn't expect much from listening to Kid Wine, especially since I saw the track listing and Lila Mars is on 2 of the tracks, featuring on 2 of the tracks. So I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to expect right here. If you have Lila Mars on your featuring, you're going to be expecting like either one of them. You're going to be expecting the best time of your life or the most time of your life. But I'm actually pleasantly surprised by this album. Actually, when the moment the first track hits my ears, I was like, what? What? Is this real life? What? Is this an actual good hip-hop album? Could this be? Could this be a magical moment? And then each of the tracks just bap, 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 bap. Magical moments in this album, you guys. This album is really full of just funk, disco, just really cool vibes throughout the entire album that is being melded with the hip-hop, chill-hop sound. I don't know much about Kid Wine before this, but I'm actually enticed to listen to more of his stuff. This album also reminded me a lot of Owen's 2020 album for Because of You, where it's also more of like a hybrid of like hip-hop and like disco sounds. Because of You is one of my top albums of 2020. I absolutely love this album, so going to this album and having a similar vibe, I absolutely love it as well. Definitely go check it out. This will blow your mind. It's really amazing. Now, I don't know much about Jang Pyo-soon. I do know that she has been around in K-pop for a long time and was, I think, one of the first generation artists in the Korean music scene. She has been around in the Korean music scene, I think, as far back as the 1980s. Wow, that's a very long time. She's been hustling for a very long time. And this year, she released her tribute album to folk composer Cho Dong-jin. I actually didn't know much about this at all going to this album. I actually went on Google and like checked who these 2 people are before I'm like, because I'm gonna be ignorant about this. But like, yeah, they both have a really good legacy in the Korean music scene, and they're definitely 2 very influential figures. So this album is, I feel like, it's a homage to Cho Dong-jin's past work. It really makes for a very solid indie folk album. This album is very soft, smooth, just really calming. It's like a blanket to your mind. If you really love Folklore by Taylor Swift, this album right here, go listen to it. It's very like indie folky. It's very like serene. It's like you are on the mountain somewhere and like it's very cooling. There's like forests around you. There's like a light sound of the waterfalls nearby you with like lots of butterflies and like woodland animals. It's just a very wholesome experience, you know what I mean? Just listen to this while you're walking in the park or something like that. It's gonna give you that really whimsical and magical experience. Well, it's not whimsical, but it's very comforting, and yeah, it gives you a very reassuring feeling that everything's gonna be okay in the end. Listening to this album might just feel like the reassurance that you need in life, you know what I mean? Now, I didn't know that this album came out. I actually knew The Guardian by Aleph because that was one of the songs that was on Volcanoes, the indie Wonder K or something like that. And I didn't think that Aleph has an EP for The Guardian until I went to compile songs on Spotify for my monthly favorites video. And then when I went to The Guardian, that's when I saw that, oh wait, Aleph does have an EP for it. So I briefly listened to it, and let's just say I was blown away by it. Not expecting much at all from this. I thought it would be like a much like dronier version of the Jang Pyo-soon album, but like I'm surprised how really good it is. Like the songs actually hit you. Well, it don't hit you in the similar sense that a pop, like an electronic pop song hits you, but like it really hits you in the feelings, you know what I mean? It's really nice. I love it. The guitar sounds on this album really just melt through the entire album, and this album also gives you a reassuring feeling. It also it's like a friend sitting next to you. playing guitar and just talking about life stories together in the most wholesome way possible. This is a wholesome album. But yeah, it's a very wholesome album. I really like it.
So that I can run away from you, so that
This might have been my favorite hip-hop release of the month. What the fuck? I didn't expect much going into this. I thought it was just gonna be like a very like crappy album full of like monotonous trap songs from track to track. But like as soon as I walked into this album and the first track hits, I know that I was in for a ride. Well, I mean, I haven't got into the ride yet because the first track of the album, it really seems harmless. You know what I mean? Like you go into the album like, oh, you're expecting a chill hop album, and then the midway point starts, the second act of the album starts, and then everything just flips over his head, and you got dragged straight into hell. My goodness, it was a roller coaster ride through hell. And then in the third act of the album, everything was fine and dandy, you know, everything went back to normal. What the heck? This is a masterpiece. If you like concept albums at all, or if you like the DPR live album, Is Anybody Out There, this is on the similar vein as Is Anybody Out There in the sense that it goes through the journey of the artist's like life stories, you know what I mean, from start to finish. Like he talks about the trials and tribulations of his life. He talks about like the doubts in his head. The first act and the third act of the album are like pretty much symbolic of like the normal life, and then the second act of the album symbolizes his like internal like dark thoughts, that is just like his concerns, his doubts, his worries, and all that horrible stuff. And it really goes to show how as humans, it's very hard to stay optimistic all the time, and you're gonna have these like really dark thoughts. It's very hard to stay upbeat, it's very hard to stay optimistic all the time, it's very hard to always think positively, but just knowing that everything will be okay, it's always, you're gonna have that someone beside you with a shoulder that says, hey, everything's gonna be okay. And that's even if it's a little reassurance, it's the best reassurance that you can get. Well, I mean, like, it's not gonna improve drastically by saying that, we all know that, but we're gonna take it slow. It's gonna improve eventually. It's gonna improve step by step, baby steps, you know what I mean? It's not gonna improve overnight, but yeah, it's gonna improve. And I like the outro of this album where this like Siri like voice is the one that's giving the reassurance. And yeah, not gonna lie, that almost made me cry. And can you believe it? I almost cried at a song where Siri is the main focus of the song. Siri, a robot voice.
I hope your life is full of happiness and good memories. Make the best of it. I love you very much.
But yeah, Siri telling us, hey, everything's gonna be okay. I love you. That really hit me so hard, and that's the thing that I want to hear right now. My goodness, this is a fantastic album. Never expected it. I was expecting worse, but boy, what a ride.
그렇지 뭐 이래도 지랄 저래도 또 지랄 바람잘 나
Epic High is always known to make these like really interesting, like really cool and interesting like hip hop albums. This time around, they got a myriad of collaborators to come join them into this really masterful album with like track by track is like really intricately made. There we go. And this album is mostly about the coronavirus, the pandemic, and how it affected a lot of people. It affected a lot of people, but also it talks about like the internal thoughts of someone, you know what I mean? This album is like the tribulations that we as humans go through. And yeah, it's very real and raw and honest, and that's what I like about it. Even the collaborators really added substance to this album, and I really like the collaborators they chose. I mean, I'll tell you what, if you put Haze, wayyyy, Noxa, and Changmo in the album track listing, this bitch gonna listen to it. And it really makes for a really solid listening experience. I love it so much. Probably one of my top favorite albums by the end of the year. Wonderful album, as always, by Epic High. Each track is very delicately made, and I really appreciate the hard work that goes pouring into the album. This is a masterpiece. What an artwork. Thank you, ehehe.
붉게 물들어가 아마 널 사랑했나 봐.
This might have been my favorite album of the month. This album, I really like his style of music. I think he's like pretty dang underrated in the K-pop community. No one ever talks about him, which is a shame because more people should. More of y'all should talk about sewoon a lot more, you know what I mean? Because his approach in indie pop music is very unique, and in the K-pop, in the Korean music sphere, there are probably similar artists to him, like, you know, your John Park, your Kim Feel, your Sam Kim, except the fact that sewoon doesn't have an English name. but yeah, it's very rare to find artists like him, because artists like him are mostly subjected to making ballads all the time, or like, which is, yeah, it's really cool and all, ballads are cool and all, but I also want artists that just make really upbeat music, you know what I mean? Like kind of upbeat-ish music. This is groovy as heck. This album is groovy as heck. This album feels like a... While 24 Part 1 talks about the joys of young adulthood, you know what I mean? It talks about the joys of young adulthood, or it sure feels like it. 24 Part 2 feels like, you know, young adulthood also might come with doubts sometimes, you know what I mean? And especially since that I'm turning 23 this year, which is in Korean age 24, which means I'm the target demographic for this album. It really hits me like a truck. This party album I definitely prefer over the Part 1 album because it felt like the darker, well, not the darker, but it felt like the more doubtful side of being in the young adult, where you're gonna have these challenges come upon you, you're gonna have doubts, you're gonna have these turbulences, these trials. But this album also talks about how you can find this tiny glimmer of hope in the state of hopelessness. The title track, In the Dark, really fully encapsulates this idea of the album, and it also resonates through the entire album. I like it. It's really the encapsulation of this entire album, the bread and butter of this album, that kind of like very grungy, almost kind of very kind of dark vibes, but also rebellious vibes, you know what I mean? I never really thought of sewoon as a rebel, but here he is, just running away from home, hanging out in the tunnels, hanging out in an old car with a birthday cake that he bought for himself for probably like several dollars. You know, in the midst of darkness, there's always a light that shines somewhere. And that light will always, that glimmer of hope is what really keeps you moving forward. That's the message of the album, and that is a really amazing message to give this album, and especially like young adults like me who are really just trying to navigate their way through life. Even in the darkness, you'll always find light. I like that message, and that is why this album is my favorite album of the month. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Wait, hold on. Huh? What's that? Wait, we have one more album?
You make me unpredictable. 잔인한 닦아도 달콤해.
Alright guys. This album is my favorite album of the month. Hands down, no bullshit, no cap. This album is my favorite. I love this album so much. This album though, my god, I love it with my whole ass heart, and I would happily gush about this album for hours on end. It's also still a really good solid pop album, one of the best idol pop albums of the month, and probably the best idol pop album of the month, I would say. This album was freaking cohesive from start to finish. I love this album so much. I'm gonna say that so many times throughout this segment. I love this album so much. this album is very clear and concise in each segment, each act. The first and third acts are definitely more of your like very like upbeat, more like preppier, perkier pop music, but it's much more polished than before. I'm gonna be going over more of it in my Playam genre breakdown video, where I will talk about their discography evolution and how they have warped their way through the K-pop music industry to get to where they are right now in terms of like they're establishing their sound and their concept and stuff like that, because I have so many things to say about that regard that I'm going to be saving it for the Playam genre breakdown. But in terms of this album, I say that this is the best album that they have put out on their terms. It may not have been the best K-pop album ever put out, but it's their best album. Boys, The Future Is Now is their magnum opus, because all of their talents really shine well in this album. Like every single member contributed so much to this album. All of them are noticed. Each individual member shines in their own way. Each of them has given their own like special moments in the song. It really made me feel proud. They have evolved so much over the years that seeing them blossom like this in the best way possible really reflects in the album's musicality. Each of the songs on the album are some of the best songs they put out in a long time, and I would say that this album is their best album and their most cohesive album since debut in 2016. None of the albums they have put out since debut have really quite properly captured me, you know what I mean? Like they're pretty much like below average, or like their pacing is off, or like it's not really fully clicking onto me. There are some standout songs on each of the albums they've released since debuted, but they didn't really fully click with me. I yearn for something that is more cohesive. I want something that is strong, I want something that really fully reflects their talents and how wonderful they are. 2019 was the year where they really found their identity after like so long of throwing things to the wall to seeing what sticks. They finally found their sound, and they've continued to hone their sound throughout 2020, and finally in 2021 they have found their sound. They have found their voice. Their voices are heard very loud and clear. Oh my god, how long have I been talking about this album? 10 minutes. Wow, that's how much I want to say about their album. But yeah, I will save a lot of my thoughts of them in the genre breakdown video. I feel like I will talk way more about them on that genre breakdown. But yeah, this album really made me happy. This album made me feel, it really personally struck a chord with me in a way that many other albums this month couldn't. And that's why this album is truly my favorite album of the month, possibly even my favorite of the year. Like, probably if it made it to my top 10 of the year, I wouldn't be so surprised. Like, me in the future, I want to ask you, did this album made it to your top 10 in the future? Please answer me. I cannot go to the future right now, but future me, if you're watching this, does this album still slap in December 2021? Because I want to know. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know how consistent I will be with this, but it's gonna be a fun experiment for me to try this year. I really want to try it out and see how it works. Talk about my favorite albums monthly like this, and just talk about what makes me like each album. And yeah, what are your favorite albums of the month? Let me know. What are your favorite releases of the month? Let me know. I'll see you guys in the next video. Next video hopefully would be the debuts video, as well as, you know, me still researching the genre breakdown. But I want to finish the debuts video first before I head on to my internship in February. So yeah, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Stay safe, everyone, and as always, be excellent to each other. Bye, loves.